just introduce Cara. Cara is a founder and data visualization consultant. She's got an academic background and specialises in helping researchers with data-driven organisations and turn their data insights into clear and compelling visualizations. I'll let her tell you a little more about that herself. Can you thank her for coming up, please?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here and to meet other people who are doing great stuff with data and local people who are doing great stuff with data. And yeah, thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to getting to know more of you as the evening progresses. Today, I'm going to be talking about the stuff that I do. And I felt I couldn't really come to an event where there was AI in the title and not have a go at least generating one AI image. So here is a fancy squirrel that I created, and I've popped a link somewhere in the presentation if you want to make your own. But I'm going to be talking about data visualization and the impact that it has, and a few projects that I've been working on recently with that at the centre. By way of introduction, I'm Cara Thompson, and the way that I ended up here was a childhood in an English-speaking family in France, where everybody plays a musical instrument. And so I grew up with a love for languages and music and how the brain makes sense of what is essentially noise. And why do we find some noises pretty and some noises really ugly? How does that work? I had the privilege of taking that into a PhD in psychology, where I put electrode caps on people and played them really weird sentences and music that I'd concocted and saw how their brains reacted to that, which is great fun. And then I took the statistics from that, spent a bit of time teaching research methods, and then moved to the Royal College of Surgeons just across the road, where I helped analyse the patterns in the exam data. And if any of you have hung out with surgeons before, you'll know that they're great people to hang out with, but they hate not understanding stuff. And so as part of that, I developed a knack with Dataviz to help them see the patterns in the data quickly so that they could then go on and ask intelligent questions about what they were seeing. And then I set up shop as a Dataviz consultant independently from that. The thing that drives me is helping others maximize the impact of their own expertise. So if I can use my expertise to speed up the work that they're doing and help it have a great impact, then that makes me really happy. And since this event is about career paths and getting to know each other, I should add something to the intro slide. I've got two little girls who arrived in our lives around the time when I was moving between the college and becoming a Dataviz consultant. And we can chat more about that later if we want to. My images are not showing up. That one isn't, never mind. So we talked about maximizing the impact of other people's expertise, and there are three ways in which I do that. One is training, one is designing Dataviz systems, and one is providing data to Viz commissions. And I've just wrapped up a project where I did the latter two of those, so I'm going to focus on that tonight. But there'll probably be some nuggets that you can take away and apply in your own organization, so there might be a bit of implicit training going on alongside all of that. So data to Viz, what do I mean by that? I mean getting from your data straight to a conversation starting visualization. When we think of graphs, sometimes we think of the kind of standard stuff that Excel will churn out, but they don't have to look like that. They can look like this or this, but I don't seem, yeah, I wonder if we've lost the internet connection.
So if we go escape?
Yeah.
No,
That's fine.
There. Should we refresh?
Yeah, let's do that. Should be pulling them in. There's nothing on that slide, it'll be on the next one. There we go, perfect, thank you very much. Technology, eh? Thank you. So yeah, graphs can look more like this. So these are two graphs that I've created straight from the data. One of them is about data in the bake-off. I love the bake-off, and I'll come back to that. And the other one is about the color of Lego bricks and how that evolved over time. And both of these were created straight from the data. If you want to see how I did it, there's a link at the bottom that takes you to the code from them. Here's more local examples using weather data to do with how much it rains in Edinburgh. It happens to rain a lot during the fringe, so the tourists get the best of the weather. And the other one to do with daylight during the day and how much I'm looking forward to longer days coming up. But I think one of the things that I really enjoy about doing these is thinking, what's the clearest way that I can present the data, and then how can I make it good to look at so that people will want to engage with it more? And so going straight from the data to the visualization, but via some design processes with a bit of influence from the art world, is something that I really, really enjoy doing. So I thought I would bring it back to maybe more familiar territory with a bar graph. I'm going to be using data from the bake-off package. I don't know what it is about the bake-off. I think watching people getting so stressed about cakes, I find it really relaxing, and I'm not quite sure what that says about me. Hopefully nothing too unhealthy. But I'm going to pop the code there. Those of you who want to see the code can go and explore it because it'll all be up on my website. Those of you who don't want to see the code, you can just ignore that side of the slide and you'll be fine. All I'm doing here is grabbing the data that we need to feed it into a plot, and then we're going to build a visualization. And it looks like this. So we fed the components data in to ggplot, which is an R package for visualization. And we've got a perfectly functional plot, but it's not very pretty. And there's a lot of text, and it's a little bit all over the place. So we're going to tidy it up a little bit, make it easier to read, add in some annotations so that we can see what goes where. And then we're going to make the colors more meaningful because that helps us see that chocolate really is the dominant ingredient in the bake. So it's no surprises there, really. And now we can turn that into a function. So we're going to create a function that is called bake-off-plot, and it takes the data, and then it wrangles it, and then it feeds it into the plotting stuff, and it styles it, and it's all happening in here. And then next time we want to create it, all we need to do is call bake-off-plot, and ta-da, here's the plot. And now you're thinking, okay, that's great, but why on earth would I do that? Why not just create it in Excel, copy, take a screenshot, pop it in MS Paint, stick some text boxes over the top of it, job done, it'll be fine. The reason for that is partly, there's nothing wrong with mixing your tools, actually. We all do it, and if there's tools that you need to mix in to make it easier, go for it. But this saves you from that scenario where that colleague comes knocking on your door and says, that data, we thought we'd lost it. I found it again. And you've already made the plot, you've made it look pretty, you've put everything in the right place. I found the data, we can include it again, we can put it back in. And you're thinking, oh, yay for science, but no, I've just spent all this time getting this right, and then you'd have to start it all from scratch. The other scenario that it saves you from is the copy-paste error issue. If you're creating all your plots and they have all those lines of code, every time you're creating it, you're copy-pasting that in different places. That's a lot of code where you could potentially make a copy-paste error. And the other thing is that just one small change, I don't like the font anymore, I want to change it. If you've copy-pasted that all over the place, you've got to change it in all the different places. Whereas if you create a function, you change it once and it applies it across the board. So I really like creating those things for organizations because it speeds up the process, keeps the code nice and maintainable, and means that everything looks on brand. And the other scenario that it helps with is if someone comes in and says, actually, the first 100 bakes we need to discard from this. We can't use them in. It was something funny about the way that they did them. All you need to do is reuse your function and just select the data so that it's just 101 bakes onwards, and then you can create a plot. Or you can take different samples. And you can just keep going and create things as you need to from that plot. But taking random samples of baking data probably isn't what you're going to be thinking about doing. So then we get to the field of parameterized plots. And these are the kind of plots where you can ask the question, what if we just excluded one series from this? And you can write your code in such a way that you can feed in the series that you want to exclude and then regenerate the plot. So here we have it again, same plot, different data. And we can keep going as much as we need to. Now, you might have some examples that already spring into mind in your own context. Maybe you write reports time and time again, where the data is different every time, but it's the same kind of data. Or maybe you write reports about different regions or different organizations, and you have to do the same thing time and time again. This is where the parameterized plots come in. So instead of one panicky squirrel that didn't want to be changed, you've got a whole bunch of squirrels, and that's great. But the other thing I said I would talk about is Dataviz design systems, and this is where we get from the same old squirrel to a snazzy squirrel. And we talked about Dataviz design systems elsewhere. The way I like to think about them is decision-making shortcuts. And you may be familiar with Mark Zuckerberg's decision-making shortcut, which is this. He only has one outfit, and he has multiple copies of it. And that's fine. That's the decision that he's made. And we all know and love people like that. My husband would be somewhere along that line of thought when it comes to clothing. But we also all have people in our lives who just look a little bit more like this. They turn up to events, and they always look really well put together. Their clothes just effortlessly fit well. They've got a style. If you come to the event later and you spot their coat on the rack, you know that it's their coat. It's just really them. And you think they must have a secret. What is that secret? Well, I can't tell you what that is when it comes to clothes, but when it comes to plots, we can do something very similar. And I really love working with clients to figure out what is the main style that they want and how can we make that functional for the kind of visualizations that they want to be presenting. So here are a few questions that we work through. What kind of colors do you want to be associated with the project? How much personality do you want to convey in the fonts? What's the maximum number of colors that you need in a visualization? Are there any key concepts that you report on that we need to find some pairings for? And what type of visualizations do you use a lot? And are there any brand guidelines that we can build on? You can revisit all of those questions at the link underneath there if you want to at any time. But I really love taking these things and working with them and finding, right, okay, how do we create their squirrel uniform? What is it that we're going to do that makes their plots look like them and that makes them work every single time? So there's a bunch of semantics involved. Semantics is what gets us from this plot to this plot. And you can see how much easier it is to see what's what once you've given it some meaningful colors. And you might be thinking, no, but I have brand guidelines and my marketing department is very clear that I need to stick to them. Okay, fine, let me just show you one thing. There we go. Which ingredient was at the bottom of that plot? Okay, let's go again. Which ingredient was at the bottom of that one? Okay, so having some semantic colors makes your plots so much easier to look at and quickly get the main story from. So it's worth looking at that. And it comes back to this notion of symbolism. Those of you who've been in the world of psychology or linguistics will have come across this before. Which one of these is Kiki? It's the spiky one. And there's a fairly clear international consensus that that's the case. And it's to do with the way that we map things that we see to the way that they sound. I like to think that we can do that with color as well. Which of these triangles is the happiest triangle? I think the yellow one looks nice and bright and happy. Yeah, okay, good, we're on the same page. On top of that, though, we've got to bring in the brand colors or the client's preferences for what they like, because otherwise we're going to just create, if everybody wanted something about happiness, we would create the same color everywhere and then everybody would look the same. And you don't, if you're a stylish squirrel, you want to stand out compared to the other also stylish squirrels. So you have to have your own brand fitting into that. A project that I worked on recently was for a researcher called Claire Meek, who works in the field of gestational diabetes. And so she wanted a brand for her plots that she said was feminine, but not too floral or sickly sweet, which was a fun concept to work with. So this painting came to mind by Leon Morocco, called Gene Resting, which has some really nice colors in it. It's pink, but it's not in your face pink, and there's a lot of variability to play with. And then the next thing she said was, I need about 20 colors, which, yeah, great. Okay, that's a lot of colors to fit in a visualization. But we did it. We came up with a color palette that was based on this image, and that she was able to use in the different visualizations that she wanted to create with her team. And it was good fun. And then we applied that to these happy and sad triangles, and now they're on brand happy and sad. And so you've got the kind of snazzy squirrel uniform coming together in all of this. Then we want to add a bit of typography, figure out how we want to change the text to make that work as well. I can't go into the details, but again, you can follow a link to a talk that I gave recently about how to craft your text well in your visualizations. And the beauty of doing this in R is that you can create packages that then just apply all of that snazzification, if that's going to be a word we're going to get away with, to your plots in just an extra 2 lines of code. And I just love the thought of people being able to focus their expertise on the stuff that needs their expertise, and then we can take care of the styling very, very quickly. It's a great shortcut, when we're thinking about making a visualization. That in this one that I created, most of the time is spent figuring out, okay, how do I arrange the data? How do I make sure that it fits? And how do I get it into the shape that I want? The color decision is made very early on because I already had that color scheme that I knew I could reuse. So it's a great shortcut for doing that kind of stuff. And then if you add in the parameterization as well, you can create some pretty powerful stuff where you've got really nice looking plots that represent different bits of the data and that work well together. So why stop there? From this one, I've recently finished a project with a client where we built the Dataviz design system, and then we built some slides so that they would look nice and on brand with it. This one, we went from this, and I teamed up with Daisy Lazarus, who's a local graphic designer, to build some Power BI dashboards that were using that styling as well. And you can see how this looks different from the Power BI dashboards that we've grown to know and love. And I think I used to say to people that I come in at the end of the pipeline, once we've done all the data stuff, and then we need to make it pretty. But actually, I would like to make the case that we should think about these things before we get to the end of the pipeline. And there are several reasons for that. One is that it forces you to think quite carefully about the type of data that you're going to collect. If you want to think about what it will look like, you have to think about how we're going to get the data to show that story. It helps you keep an eye on things as they develop. The ingredients that were coming up in those plots, we could kind of have a race going and keep tally on that. It allows you to quickly present memorable graphs to internal stakeholders once you've got that. So was it that rhubarb or was it Genoise that was at the bottom of that plot? It was rhubarb, yeah. And then we can have a quick turnaround once we've got all the data. We've all been in that position where there's a publication and the deadline is tomorrow and you're still waiting for the last wee bit of data. If you've got everything lined up nicely beforehand, it should mean that you can have a quick turnaround. But it's more than just a time saver. It means that you bake in accessibility from the very start of your pipeline. You can have a unified aesthetic across memos and external publications wherever they end up, which then brings brand recognition for you and for your team. People know, okay, that's them. I recognize that. And no more procrastinating picking colors, or in my case, creating squirrel illustrations for a presentation. Have I got a few more minutes? Yeah. So I thought I would bring it all together and talk about an app that I've built just over the last few days using WebR. So for those of you who use, how many of you use R in the room? Okay, a good number of you. So have you heard of WebR? No. Good. Okay, this is good. So WebR is fairly recent, but what it allows you to do, it allows you to run R code within a web browser. So it's built using WebAssembly, and that's about as much as I'm going to say about it. But the beauty of it is it means that people can use R without having to install anything on their local devices. And I built this app partly because I was inspired by this bar graph that came through my door a few weeks ago. And the last time something like this came through my door, I spent a bit of time with my kids' toys trying to figure out why the bars were not the right length when you compare them to the data that's inside them. And I spent some time trying to figure out the maths behind what had happened there. And then I thought, what if there was an easier way of figuring this out? Rather than stacking monkeys or penguins on top of each other, could I create something that would allow people to put the data in and create a bar graph? Something that anyone could use that would check the accuracy of the bars, that would also see what we might be missing by choosing bars, because bars are not necessarily the right choice, and make use of the meme effect, because you know that memes travel far and wide. And then I thought, yeah, WebR, I can do that. So I created an app that allows people to do these things. So you can put in the values, and then it will spit out a bunch of graphs all together. And we've got the same principles going on throughout this. So we've got the styling, the colors that you put get applied across all of the plots, and they're always associated with the same group of people or the same bar. And we've got the theme. So I created a theme for the plot that then gets applied to all the plots. So again, they look like they've come from the same house, which is nice. And then all we need to do is create the plot and then apply the themes to it. And then we need to parameterize the unknown. So we need to take the data that people are giving us and build systems around it so that it will create the parameterized plots that we want to create. And we've talked about all that, so this is easy, right? So we've got a function that takes in the data, we've got a theming function, and then we've got a function that makes the graphs, that takes in that data and the theme, combines them, and spits out something that looks like this, which is quite fun. The glorious gory details, if you're interested, were when I fell into traps, like what if the sum isn't 100? What do we do with that? If it's a percentage, fine, fill in the rest of them with NAs. It's quite good if people are reporting, 39% of people think this and 5% think this. Well, actually, what about all the rest of the people that are not featured in this data? It's worth highlighting them. But then what if it's greater than 100? And what if it's not a percentage? Do we change things there? So there's stuff in here that takes into account all these things that you can explore if you like to. And then what if they input the same color twice, like they did in the original? Maybe that's okay. We just leave it. What if the waffle package won't load? Because we need to take into account package loading and all these things. And what if it makes it super slow? That's okay. We can create it from scratch. So if you want to explore all the workarounds that I had to create, they're all in here, and you can do that in your own time. And if you want to give it a go, there is a QR code for the app just there, and it will work on your phones, which is quite fun. So you can run R code on your phones, and you can change the code that's inside the little code box if you want to and rerun it and do something totally different. But there we have it, an app that does that. Having said all that about bar graphs and how there are better ways of doing it, I think the lib dems did do one thing right, which is that they applied their Dataviz design system consistently. You see that thing and you know that's come from the lib dems because it's got their branding on it. And so they've kind of made my case for me that looking for design rules that you can apply consistently through your stuff gives you that recognition that you're looking for. So that's all I have to share with you this evening. I'm really looking forward to chatting in person while we're here. Feel free to send me an email. You can find me on LinkedIn, and here are a bunch of QR codes if you want to explore anything further, or if you have someone in mind and you think, actually, that I should chat to so-and-so about this, then send them a link. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.